The sun over the Dakota frontier burned low and red as if warning the world that something irreversible was about to unfold. Rancher Colt Maddox rode with a slow, heavy rhythm, his horses' hooves thudding like distant drums as he approached the Cheyenne borderlands. Dust clung to his jacket, the last remnants of a 2-day ride across drought-stricken plains. Every mile behind him was a mile of desperation, debts choking his ranch, wells running dry, cattle thinning, and the lonely echo of a house too big for one man. His mother had died during a winter blizzard 5 years earlier, his father during a cattle stampede 2 years before that, and Colt had been left with land, legacy, and a heartbreak he didn't know how to repair. When the northern well dried last month, the only source of water left in the valley belonged to Chief Taurus, the iron-backed leader of the Cheyenne tribe. And if Colt didn't secure water rights, soon Maddox Ranch would die. Colt had heard many things about the chief, that he was ruthless, that he was honorable, that he had never lost a battle, but the most whispered rumor was the one Colt didn't believe, that the chief hid his daughter because she was cursed, so ugly that even the sun turned from her face. Colt never put stock in cruel gossip, but the rumor lingered in his mind nonetheless as he approached the tribal grounds. The land shifted around him as he crossed into Cheyenne territory. Sagebrush thickened, the smell of smoke grew stronger, and the steady beat of ceremonial drums thrummed through the wind like the heartbeat of a sleeping giant. Torches flickered ahead, dotted around a sacred circle where dozens of warriors had gathered. Their painted faces, stern and unreadable, turned in unison toward Colt as he rode into view. He slowed, raised one hand in respect, and dismounted. The warriors didn't move. Their stillness was not peaceful, it was expectant, as if they had been waiting for him. At the center of the circle stood Chief Taurus himself, massive, carved from stone, his braided hair adorned with eagle feathers, his staff decorated with wolf claws and sacred beads. His dark eyes held storms in them, and when he spoke, the air itself seemed to freeze. "Rancher Maddox," he boomed, voice vibrating in the ground. "You come seeking water?" Colt nodded. "I came to negotiate." The chief's jaw clenched. Negotiation is no longer an option. A murmur swept through the warriors. Colt kept his posture calm, but tension tightened in his chest. "What do you want from me?" Chief Taurus lifted his staff and pointed toward a white-draped lodge at the edge of camp. Its entrance was closed, and inside, a woman's silhouette rested unmoving, her head bowed. The chief's expression turned grim. "My daughter," Colt blinked. "Your daughter? You will marry her," the chief declared, as if announcing a law of nature. "Marry her or leave these lands forever. You will have no water, no access, no passage." Colt stared in disbelief. "Marriage? A forced one at that?" He looked around. The warriors' faces were carved masks, eyes sharp, some filled with contempt, some with pity. The chief continued, voice heavy. "Ayanna is not desired. Men fear her, mock her, refuse her hand." Several warriors shifted, smirking under their breath. The chief's fists tightened, but he kept speaking. "If she is not wed soon, the spirits will say my family line is cursed. The tribe will lose faith in my leadership." Colt's heart clenched briefly. Even across cultures, he could understand the weight of a father's burden. But this was extreme. "Chief," Colt said carefully, "with all due respect, marriage is—" "Ayanna must marry tonight," the chief interrupted, raising his voice. "Tonight? Before the moon reaches its highest peak." His tone left no space for argument. Colt exhaled slowly. "I came for water, not marry my daughter," the chief thundered, stepping closer. "Or ride back to your ranch and watch it die," Colt swallowed. The words were chains pulling him in two directions, toward survival or sacrifice. "At least let me see her," he murmured. "Let me speak to her." The chief shook his head. "You will see her when you lift the veil. That is the tradition." Colt frowned. "I'm not a man who marries blind. You are a man with no water," the chief replied coldly. Silence stretched. The drum beat slowed, as if awaiting his choice. Colt looked again at the white-draped lodge. Ayana, hidden from the world, mocked by her people, described as cursed, ugly, unwanted, a woman treated like a burden simply for existing. Despite the sting of being cornered, Colt felt something stir inside him, compassion, maybe, or defiance against cruelty. In his chest, the Maddox honor whispered its demand. Colt inhaled deeply, then said the words that changed everything. "I'll marry her." Gasps erupted. Some warriors laughed bitterly. Others shook their heads. The chief exhaled, with what could have been relief or dread. Colt couldn't tell. "Then prepare," the chief commanded. "The spirits will not wait." Torches blazed brightly around the ceremonial circle as night fell like a curtain. Women brought out bowls of sage and cedar, casting them into the fire until smoke curled through, the sky like ghost hands reaching upward. Colt stood at the center, shoulders squared, though his pulse thundered through him. Beside him stood Ayana, veiled head to toe in white cloth. Not a single strand of hair visible, not a breath too loud. Colt sensed her trembling. She did not look at him. She did not even seem fully present, more like a shadow wearing human shape. The shaman stepped forward, chanting prayers in the ancient tongue, sprinkling sacred herbs around them. Ayana's voice, when she repeated her vows, was barely a whisper, fragile as a leaf trembling on a dying tree. Colt repeated his vows firmly, honoring the moment, even if it felt surreal, even if part of him wondered whether he was sealing his own ruin. Then the shaman raised both hands. The veil may be lifted. The entire circle held its breath. Warriors leaned forward. Women murmured. The chief's eyes tightened with dread. Colt reached toward the veil. Ayana flinched, so subtly only he noticed. He paused. "It's all right," he whispered. "I won't hurt you." Her trembling softened. Gently, Colt lifted the veil, and in that instant, a shockwave rippled through the crowd. Ayana was not ugly, not cursed, not even plain. She was stunning, breathtaking, like the quiet beauty of dawn before. The sun crests the horizon. Her skin glowed softly in the firelight. Her features were delicate, ethereal. Her hazel eyes, flecked with gold, shimmered with fear and long-buried sorrow. But that wasn't what stole Colt's breath. It was the bruises, hidden under faint makeup, barely visible now, but undeniable. Old bruises, faded scars, pain swallowed in silence. Behind him, someone cursed under their breath. The chief closed his eyes, shame, grief, fury rippling in his expression. Ayana lowered her gaze, tears forming, as though expecting Colt to recoil, to mock her, to reject her as everyone else had. But Colt stepped closer instead, voice low, trembling not with fear but outrage. Why would anyone call you ugly?" Ayana's lip trembled. "Because it is safer," she whispered. The chief barked, "Enough!" His voice cracked like thunder, sharp and defensive. But Colt's heart was already unraveling. Something was horribly wrong here, something deeper than rumor. Something darker than a forced marriage. And as Colt placed his hand gently over Ayana's cold, shaking fingers, he knew this was no simple bargain. This was the beginning of a storm that had been building for years. A storm he was now bound to by honor, by vow, and by something he didn't yet have a name for. When the ceremony ended, and Colt helped Ayana onto his horse to ride toward his ranch, the chief watched with haunted eyes, not relieved, not triumphant, but terrified. And Colt understood why only hours later, when he discovered what Ayana had truly been hiding from the world. The night deepened as Colt rode with Ayana seated in front of him, her back stiff, her posture guarded as though bracing for an invisible blow. The moon carved silver over the land, stretching their shadows long and thin across the prairie. Colt could feel her trembling through the thin fabric of her ceremonial dress. She didn't speak, not even once, and when he tried to shift the blanket around her shoulders, she jerked as if expecting to be struck. That single flinch cut deeper into Colt than any blade could. He didn't press her with questions. He didn't dare. Something about her silence felt fragile, like one wrong word could make her withdraw into herself completely. As they crossed the final ridge before his ranch, the lights of his lonely homestead flickered below. The place looked small from afar. One barn, one cabin, one failing corral, but to Colt it was family history, everything he'd ever fought to protect. Ayana watched the ranch with wide eyes, but there was no curiosity in them, only fear, as if stepping into this new life meant stepping into another form of captivity. Colt slowed the horse. "You're safe here," he said softly. "No one will harm you. Not now. Not ever." Ayana didn't respond. Silence wrapped around her like a second veil. Colt carefully lifted her down and set her on the ground. She winced at the contact, not from pain, but from instinctive dread. He kept his hands at his sides so she wouldn't feel cornered. "Come inside," he said gently. "It's cold." Inside the cabin, a warm fire crackled, casting golden light across the wooden walls. Ayana stood near the door, staring at everything as if she'd been dropped into another world. Colt offered her water, food. She shook her head each time. He pointed toward the guest room. "That's where you can sleep. The bed is clean. No locks on any doors." Ayana's shoulders loosened just slightly at that detail. "If you need anything," Colt continued, "you can knock. Or not, whatever makes you comfortable." She looked at him for the first time since leaving the tribe. Her eyes were stunning and full of exhaustion so deep it looked older than she was. "Why are you speaking to me like this?" she whispered. Colt blinked. "Like what?" "Like I'm human." Her voice cracked. Colt felt something in him twist. "Because you are," he said simply. Ayana swallowed, tears gathering but not falling. She stepped slowly into the guest room, closing the door with a soft click. Colt remained standing in the empty living room for a long time. The fire popped. Wind rattled the windows. Somewhere in the barn, a restless horse kicked at a stall door, but his mind stayed fixed on the bruises he'd seen beneath her veil, the faint handprints on her arms, the scar above her brow, the skin on her wrists rubbed raw by something that looked too much like rope. She wasn't ugly. She wasn't cursed. She was hurt, and someone had made sure the world believed otherwise. He barely slept that night. Every shift of movement from the guest room made him twitch with alertness. Was she crying? Was she afraid he'd return her? Had the chief forced her to marry because he wanted to hide something? The more Colt thought, the more wrong everything felt. At dawn, he found Ayana awake in the kitchen, sitting perfectly still on a chair, her hands folded in her lap. She hadn't touched the water he'd left. Her eyes were red from crying. "You don't need to wake this early," Colt said gently. Ayana startled. I thought you would want breakfast made." Colt shook his head. "You don't owe me anything." She blinked rapidly, confused. "Then why?" "Why did you marry me?" "To save my ranch," Colt said honestly. "And because I didn't like how your people treated you." Her breath hitched. "They weren't always like that." She paused, as though choosing her next words with care. "People began to fear me when they learned where I was kept." Colt sat across from her. "Ayana, where were you kept?" Her fingers curled tight. "In the moon house," she whispered. Colt frowned. "What's that?" "The place where the tribe sends women they believe are cursed, possessed or dangerous." Colt's heart thudded. "And your father put you there?" "No," she said quickly. "Not at first. It was the council, after the attacks." "What attacks?" Ayana looked at the floor. A man was found injured. Then another. Then another. My father's political rivals, all harmed in the dark. Colt exhaled sharply. "And they blamed you?" "They said I brought misfortune, that I drew spirits, that I angered the ancestors." Her voice trembled. "They said I was born wrong." Colt stared at her. "Born wrong?" "No, she was born into cruelty, disguised as tradition." "Ayana," he murmured, "did you harm anyone?" She shook her head fiercely. "Never, I would never, But she stopped speaking. Her mouth opened and closed silently, like she wanted to say more, but fear shackled the words. "It doesn't matter," she whispered. "Truth never mattered once the council decided I was a threat." Colt rubbed his jaw. "Your father must have known you weren't cursed." "He did," she said softly. "But the council controls the tribe. They threatened to overthrow him if he protected me." Colt's chest tightened. Chiefs didn't bow easily. For a man like Taurus to bend, something immense must have happened. "Why marry me off?" Colt asked. "Why now?" Ayana's eyes filled again with dread. "Because something worse is coming," she whispered. "Something the council wants to hide." Colt leaned forward. Ayana, what are they hiding? Her voice cracked. Someone is going to die. Colt stiffened. Who? Her next words slipped from her lips like a confession carried on broken breath. You. Silence swallowed the room. Colt's heartbeat slowed, deep, steady, cautious. Me? They chose you, Ayana said, trembling. They want you gone, and making you my husband was the perfect way to do it. Colt's chest burned cold. Why me? Because you stand in the way, she whispered. The water rights, the land, the valley, they want it all. And a dead outsider means no war, no blame, no suspicion. Colt stared at her, breath tight. The council hadn't wanted a marriage. They wanted an execution. His execution. Ayana wiped tears with shaking fingers. They planned to kill you on the journey back. But my father intervened, Colt inhaled sharply. He forced the marriage so they couldn't touch me? She nodded. A husband of the chief's daughter is protected by the old laws. They can't kill you without permission from the spirits. It stalled them. Stalled? Colt repeated. Ayana nodded again. They'll try again soon, maybe here, maybe on tribal land, maybe in the dark. Colt clenched his fists. Rage curled hot through his veins, but so did something else, understanding. Taurus wasn't trying to punish Colt. He was trying to save two lives, Colt's and Ayana's. He stared at her, realizing the depth of what she carried. Exiled by her people, blamed for crimes she didn't commit, forced into a marriage not to curse a man, but to protect him. And now she sat before him, terrified that she had doomed them both. Colt stood, walked to her side, and crouched until they were eye level. Ayana, no one is killing me, and no one is taking you back to that moon house. Not while I'm alive. Her lips trembled. Why are you being kind to me? Colt didn't answer right away. The truth came slowly, quietly, like something rising from deep water. Because someone should have been kind to you a long time ago. Ayana broke. Tears spilled freely. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Colt didn't touch her, not yet. Instead, he quietly set a warm blanket around her shoulders, stepped back, and let her cry without fear of punishment. When her tears slowed, she whispered, I don't know how to be someone's wife. Colt replied softly, Then don't be. Not until you want to, not until you trust me, not until you're ready. Her eyes widened with disbelief. You would wait. As long as it takes, Colt said. For the first time, a very small, fragile smile touched her lips. A sunrise in the middle of a storm. And that was when a sharp crack echoed outside. A sound too crisp to be thunder. Too sudden to be wind? Colt snapped his head toward the window. His hand instinctively drifted toward the gun hanging by the door. Ayana's face drained of color. They followed us, she whispered. They came to finish it. The sundown grounds glowed with torchlight, the flames painting flickering gold across the tense faces of the gathered villagers. Everyone had come, not because they loved Mayari, the chief's veiled, unwanted daughter, but because they wanted to witness the spectacle. A stranger, a rancher from distant plains, had agreed to marry the village's cursed girl. They came thirsty for scandal, for confirmation of the rumors, for entertainment. But they had no idea they stood on the edge of a night that would rewrite everything they thought they knew about honor, beauty, and destiny. Kato stepped onto the ceremonial platform with a steady, fearless stride. He had not slept, had not eaten, but he walked as a man who had already made peace with whatever storm this choice might unleash. Torches cracked around him, villagers whispering in disbelief as he stood tall beside the chief. And beside the chief, trembling from head to toe, stood the girl, Mayari, her face hidden behind the long, white veil she'd worn since childhood, to protect others from the ugliness, to protect herself from their cruelty. But now she shook, because this was the moment she feared more than any other. After tonight, her secret would no longer be her own. Chief Luta raised his hands for silence. His voice rumbled like a distant earthquake. Tonight, we witness a union not born of tradition, nor of convenience, nor of wealth. This man, a stranger to our lands, has chosen to accept my daughter as his wife. Many of you whispered that no man ever would. He swept his gaze across the crowd as guilt. flickered in their expressions. But he did, not for gain, not for fear, but because he spoke honor when others spoke mockery. The drumbeat slowed, deepened, swelling through the village like a heartbeat. "Let the vows be spoken." Kaito turned toward Mayuri. She stood so still that he feared she might faint. He lowered his voice so only she could hear. "Whatever happens," he whispered, "you won't face it alone." Her breath caught. She swallowed hard but didn't move. When the chief asked Kaito if he accepted Mayuri, the rancher answered immediately, firmly, voice steady and sure. "I do." When the chief turned to his daughter and asked if she accepted this man, Mayuri hesitated, not because she wanted freedom, not because she feared him, but because she dreaded what he might feel when he finally saw her. Still, with trembling lips, she whispered, I do." Chief Luta stepped back. The drums stopped entirely, leaving only crackling fire. "Then," he said, "the veil shall be lifted." Mayuri's body locked in place. Every muscle, every breath, every hope and fear braced itself for the single moment she had been taught to dread since childhood. Gato stepped forward gently, slowly raising his hands. Her breath hitched. "Don't," she whispered shakily. If you regret it, please don't show anyone. Look away first." Her voice cracked with old wounds. "I've had enough people look at me like I'm cursed." Kaito swallowed hard. Her fear pierced him more sharply than any blade. "Mayuri," he said so softly it felt like a vow, "I will not look away." She trembled, then gave the smallest nod. The torches hissed as the night wind brushed past. Kaito lifted the veil. Gasps erupted through the crowd, loud, harsh, shocked. But Kaito didn't hear them. For a moment he didn't hear anything, not even his own heartbeat. Because Mayuri was not ugly. She was not cursed. She was not the monster they had whispered about her entire life. She was breathtaking. Her face was delicate, carved in soft lines that glowed in the firelight. Her eyes, almond-shaped and shimmering, held depths of fear and innocence and strength that struck him silent. A rose-colored birthmark brushed across her cheek, soft and gentle, a natural beauty mark that made her look unique, not flawed. Her lips trembled full and soft. Her long lashes fluttered like fragile wings. She looked like someone who had been forced to stand in the shadows her entire life, but was born to glow. Kaito's breath escaped him, not in disgust, not in disappointment, but in stunned, reverent admiration. "Mayuri," he breathed. "You are—" His voice faltered, not because he couldn't find the right word, but because none existed. "Beautiful." Her eyes widened in disbelief. Her lips parted. "No," she whispered, shaking her head as tears welled. "Don't lie." "Everyone says everyone was wrong," he cut in, voice rough with sincerity. Mayuri's tears spilled over. "You're not disgusted?" "No," he said immediately. "I'm honored." The villagers stared, humiliated and stunned. Some turned away in shame. Others wiped their eyes, confronted for the first time by their own cruelty. Even Chief Luta looked shaken, as if he, too, saw something he had somehow never allowed himself to notice, his daughter's true face. But before anything else could be said, a shout erupted from the crowd. "No!" A large warrior stormed forward. "Darak, one of the fiercest fighters in the tribe. This is wrong. She is cursed. Her face brought her mother death." Gasps rippled. Mayuri flinched as if struck. Kaito stepped in front of her instantly, placing himself between her and the warrior. His voice rumbled with quiet fury. "You will not speak to her that way," Darak snarled. "You know nothing, outsider. That mark killed the chief's first wife. Everyone knows the story." Another voice rose behind him. "She was born the night the storm destroyed the eastern fields. They say her cry scared the spirits. She should have never removed the veil." Mayuri curled into herself, breathing sharply, hands trembling violently. Gato felt something inside him snap, the last thread of silence, the last restraint. "Enough!" he roared, voice booming across the grounds. The entire crowd froze. A baby did not kill anyone. A child cannot curse a village. You cursed her with your cruelty, your fear, your cowardice. Gasps filled the air. Darak bristled. "Who are you to judge us?" "A man who sees her," Kaito growled. "When all of you chose to look away, Silence fell, thick, heavy, unescapable. Kaito turned to Mayari, lifting her chin with gentle fingers. "You did nothing wrong," he whispered. "Nothing." The drums began again, slow, deep, powerful, as if the ancestors themselves agreed. Chief Luta stepped forward, his voice low but strong. "My daughter," he said, his tone shaking with emotion, "was never cursed. It was my fear, not her face, that veiled her." The crowd stiffened. The chief swallowed hard, decades of guilt pressing into his voice. "When my wife died giving birth, I blamed the wrong thing. I blamed the harmless mark she carried. I let the people whisper. I let the veil become her prison." His voice broke. "Forgive me, Mayari," she gasped softly. For the first time in her life, she heard apology in her father's voice. The chief raised his staff. "Let the marriage be sealed." The villagers knelt. The drums thundered. Kaito took Mayari's hands. She looked up at him, eyes shining with tears of shock, relief and something new, hope. "Kaito," she whispered, "do you really want me?" He brushed his thumb over her hand. "I chose you, Mayari, and I will keep choosing you." Her breath trembled. "Even though they think I'm cursed, then I guess I'm cursed with you," he said softly. "And I've never wanted anything more." Her laugh burst from her, small, fragile, beautiful. The chief declared them husband and wife as the village bowed their heads, humbled. The drums roared again, the sky above blazing with stars as if celebrating her freedom. Kaito lifted Mayari's hands to his lips as the marriage was sealed. She stared at him like she was seeing the sun for the first time. "Thank you," she whispered, "for giving me a life I never thought I could have." He leaned closer. "Mayari, this is just the beginning." She smiled, a radiant, trembling smile that lit the entire night. And for the first time in her life, she stepped forward without hiding her face. And for the first time in his life, Kaito felt himself falling, not into danger, not into fear, but into the deep, powerful certainty that this night would change both their lives forever.